Welcome to Two Brothers and an Idea. They call me Ferdinand, the leader of many disciplines and the bringer of balance. And I'm one of the hosts of Two Brothers and an Idea. The big homie, well, like May said, we ain't got big homies no more. my homie, my friend, one of my mentors, Teton. So we might have some technical difficulties.
Check one, mic check.
Let's
You hear me, sir?
Yeah, we can hear we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. I'm guessing you're not able to hear me, so let me just disconnect this. I apologize to everybody out there who was listening. Let's go ahead and take out these AirPods. All right. Can you hear me now?
Hear me, sir? You hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't hear you at all.
Okay. All right.
I heard you earlier when we were offline, but I don't hear you now. Maybe some minor adjustments. But anyhow, it's always a wonderful day when you don't hear yourself. Well, this is Teton Moffitt, and this is Two Brothers and an Idea. And too often, technical professionals sometimes find ways to make mistakes with audio.
Hopefully, you're able to hear me now.
I hear new. I don't hear you full time.
All right. I think that might be something on your end, brother.
One more time. I hear you, sir.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Cool. Good.
Yeah, I hear you. Hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. So as I was saying before, welcome to Two Brothers and an Idea. Call me Ferdinand, leader of many disciplines, the bringer of balance, and I am here today with my co-host, an amazing brother, Teton.
Peace, sir. This is always a good opportunity to be here and have these conversations. You know, I'm always quite prepared for the unexpected, and too often we get into our groove of professionalism and we forget about the audio. So I'm grateful that we were smart enough to fix that issue real quickly. Let's rock and roll, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Doing good. How's the family?
Family's good. Hey, yours?
Oh man. Hey, if I was to complain, then I will have no more business being here on planet Earth. I have very little or nothing to complain about. And I'm grateful, grateful to be here today, grateful to be here this morning and to be a part of this great conversation. You know, a lot of these warnings and things that we hear about in our internet, in our internet, there's a lot of conversation about relationships, life, and so forth and so on.
Before we go into that, I want to ask you a quick question, right?
Yes, sir.
When I asked you how your family was doing, we started with a statement about not being able to complain. And
oh no, I said we're doing well. Everything is well. Everything is well. And so you asked me about not complaining.
So all right. So when I asked you about how your family was doing, you gave a statement about how you're not able to complain, right? So that's a very common type of statement that I hear from a lot of people. And I, if you don't mind, I'd like you to unpack that because I want to dive in on that for a second. We need to go into that.
Well, the reason why I often say that is because it's very simple to mask what is really going on when someone asks you how is family or how is life or whatever. And it's also easy to say, hey, all hell is broken loose. I'm not having a good day, whining. So I want to be mindful that one, being grateful that I'm alive. I'm have the activity in my limbs. I can breathe. I can experience this new day. And to also understand that I have to be responsible of how I start my morning. So in other words, regardless of what may not be comfortable or may not be normal in this particular moment, I think it's fitting to speak about the greater things and the greater expectations of how I see my day to be. So I'm not going to mention anything negative. I'm going to mention everything that's going to be great. Everything is well. And I want to put that out there, you know, and I've done that frequently because there was a time in my life. And sometimes, you know, you want to just say, somebody say, how's family? Oh, everything's good. And everything ain't good. The house is burning, the dog is burning, you know what I mean? Or somebody says, well, how's the family? Oh, man, the wife. Oh, man, the dog, man. And people don't want to hear all that. Come on. So this is where I'm at. And that's why I kind of choose to find a more positive perspective, even when it's not bad, even when it is good, even when it is bad, you know. I want to be able to have a healthy outlook for these 24 hours that are ahead of me.
Well, I'm gonna say this, and it's not necessarily advice for you, but I do think that we all should be aware of this. What we say first matters the most.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely.
So, like when a person like sometimes I'll ask my wife questions, right, and sometimes it might be a question that not necessarily pushes a trigger for her, but it may be something that she's not really prepared for, right? So she'll answer the way she wants to, which is fine. That's that's her choice. Nothing wrong with it. But it also gives away that there may be a negative thought that's on the forefront of her mind, right? So like for you and for all the other brothers out there, when you start with I'm not going to complain, you're already giving away that there's some challenges that you're facing. And,
well, yeah, I understand that. I mean, I get that. To be truthful, I ain't feel like doing this podcast. I ain't feel like getting up, getting going, talking to you on this camera. I ain't feel like doing nothing. Right. Had a long night. Right. Had a wonderful birthday celebration for my lovely wife. She turns 44 yesterday. So I had a great situation, but right now I had some challenges this morning. So to your point, now that we have projected the positive and we projected the obvious, we still rocking and rolling. So what's the topic today, sir?
well, hey, for everybody out there, there's a warning to all the young men and a warning to everybody else. Watch what you say before you give Teton the chance to respond.
You damn right, because I'm gonna light your tail up right on up.
Our topic for today is warning for young men.
Yes,
and this has been a fitting topic for many decades, especially in America. Young men unfortunately, they have a lot to worry about, even though they shouldn't be worrying at all. But there's many traps, many balls, many sand pits that are just set, waiting for our young men to catch them off guard, to put them in situations that they're not prepared for, but that puts them in a position where they have a lot of energy that they have to give just to get out of it. You know, so we've got to work together in the community to make sure that these young men have the warnings that they need.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that as I reflect back in my 20s, my early 20s, a lot of my early 20s was spent overseas in the military, and I'm sure yours was spent in the military as well. There was a lot of things that we had to learn by trial, by error. There's a lot of conversations that we had with our parents and those that helped develop us along our way that necessarily we didn't want to hear in our heads. We didn't want to do, man, I'm out here. I'm in a foreign country. I can do whatever I want to do. I ain't got to answer to nobody. I ain't got to check in with nobody. I got the clubs. I got the city. I got all this whole life ahead of me. I'm 19 years old. I'm 20 years old in a foreign country. And, and so a lot of the life lessons, although my mother and father made great deposits in my life, this journey has a tendency of taking turns. And sometimes things don't necessarily turn out the way, things are expected. So there's a lot of principal things that I had to figure out along the way. Okay, can't do this no more. You know how you put your hand on the stove and after a while you find out that it's hot. You know, those kinds of experiences, man. So I think this conversation is really dope because it'll just give young brothers a framework, right, to consider, and they can add to it and take from it, but to fashion it to their style and their development. I think those key principle things that we have prepared will make good conversation, especially with fathers and sons.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I think about warnings for young men, I often say, and this is without looking at the numbers, without looking at the census and all of that, I say that young melanated men in America are endangered species. And it may or may not be factual according to whatever the definition of an endangered species is. Right? But at the end of the day, what I will say is this: young brothers are being pulled in all kinds of different directions, and we've got to be ready. You know, it's a challenging thing having to sit your son down and explain to him how he needs to conduct himself when he gets pulled over by police while he's driving down the street, because he might get treated differently than Billy or Susan. You know, it's challenging to have the conversation with your son or even with your daughter about, well, this is a warning for young men. So it's challenging to have the conversation with your son
Yeah.
and explain to him how how he may get used for money, how his energy may get exploited, how a woman may use him, or how the government may try to use him, or how other groups of people may try to use him. But there's so many different individuals out here who are working together with other individuals to prey on our young men. You know, so these are topics that they're hard when you have to have that conversation with your son, but are necessary, at least in America.
I agree. I agree with you on that. I think I have to go back to my experiences. I was never told what to do when I got pulled over by law enforcement. No one never told me that. My father and I, we didn't talk about it. Basically, the idea that I had found is that I had such great respect for authority. And so, but at the same time, over time, we find out that these conversations are difficult to have because there's a loss of respect for authority in your communities and your homes. And so you have these images, we have this network of things that are being promoted, seen on television and radio and the media, but also there are some very difficult things that are still existing in certain communities across the United States that we are not aware of, right? And so what I had to learn to do is understand that I am responsible first for how I conduct myself. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you should just let someone take advantage of you and abuse you, assault you, or bring harm to you. But if you do what is necessary to stay alive, come back home the next day, right? Being respectful. If the officer asks for your ID card, I mean, come on, just some of this stuff. I think we have to be more responsible in communicating certain things to our young men, about how to conduct themselves, how to engage, how to disengage, right? I remember in Virginia, I got pulled over like 5 times. And 3 of the times I got pulled over, unfortunately, it was me. I was speeding, driving erratically. I could tell that the officer was very annoyed with me because he accused me of evading him. But those lessons, those conversations, those things that we see and hear was constantly a reminder. So I had to remember, okay, ain't no need for me getting attitude, talking crazy, being slick. I was driving crazy. So the best way for me to is get myself out of this situation is to be honest about where I am, give him my license, give him my register, all that stuff, and keep it moving. But every situation is not like that. And we do know that. And often we see officers that look like us, right? That are a threat for whatever reason. You know what I mean? And so I just think that having these conversations amongst many other conversations, as we just led with law enforcement and being pulled over. I'm grateful for the government and agencies such as this in Virginia, where we had Delegate Juwan Ward, who basically passed a bill where that in driver's ed, there is a curriculum now that teaches young people how to engage with law enforcement. So what's the lesson there? We have to understand laws and policy. And then we're impacted in some kind of way. How do we get some resolution? So what is the resolution before the problem? Are we going to be proactive or reactive?
Well, every family has the opportunity to make that choice for themselves on whether they're going to be proactive or reactive. But what I would like to get back to is what you're saying about your respect for authority, how you handled police when they pulled you over, and I think that's super important. You know, it really depends on the person. Not everybody gets those conversations.
Right.
Not everybody is told, you know, that they need to conduct themselves a certain kind of way with police. But I do think that I do think that many of yours and my generation, we got a really, really, I mean, I can't call it awesome at all because it was horrible. We got a horrible representation on video of how melanated people sometimes are treated by police. Well, what was that? That was Rodney King. Well, you know, the children of today, they see, you know, they see these atrocities on social media on a regular basis. But back in the day, during our generation, where you wasn't seeing you wasn't seeing brothers getting beat up or killed by police on television on a regular basis, like unless they were showing some old footage of something that may have happened in the civil rights time or something. Somebody, you know, 1940s, 1950s getting hung from a tree down south or whatever. So to see on the news Rodney King being treated the way he was treated, being hurt the way he was hurt, I think that sent a heavy message to a lot of brothers who were younger, maybe like your age or my age during that time, and helped us who didn't have those conversations in the home. You know, like my dad, he said a few things to me here or there, but my dad didn't really go in and say, all right, listen, you know, if you get pulled over by police, this is exactly what you do in this situation. If you're on the interstate, you're dealing with state police, this is what you do. If you're dealing with an FBI agent for whatever reason, somehow you're dealing with feds, this is what you do. Like, no, I didn't get those conversations. I basically got the conversation and listen, act like you got some damn sense, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that, you know, as you were talking, I was thinking about that time frame of Rodney King. I was 17 years old. Matter of fact, I was getting ready to turn 18, getting ready to join the Navy. And I saw the footage. Of course, we saw all of that. And you know, you think about what you said about our generation did not have, you know, the accurate enough attention to some of the things that we're expressing today. But I would say this: the same measure of discipline, accountability, and responsibility that has been bestowed upon us by our elders in terms of how to respect one another, how to respect your mother, how to respect your siblings, your family, your community, right, should be the same measure that's placed upon a multitude of things, right? As we talk about law enforcement. Now, we get it. We get it. I totally get it. There's a lot of jacked up stuff going on. But the rules of engagement, as it was pertaining to how to handle conflict or how to deal with certain things, still should apply the same way, right? But I'm not an advocate for law enforcement. I'm not an advocate for ACLU. You know, I've read those policies. I've read some of those things. I've shared some of the information with my son. But I just think it's important to understand, if you conduct yourself honorably, responsibly, and granted, things do happen, but what is the first reaction and response to conflict? Is it anger? Right? Because we're used to blaming white people. We're used to identifying uh, other issues that is not related to us as justification for our behavior, but how is it in our own communities? Should I not go there? Where we don't say nothing, we're hiding, we're keeping things a secret, but only when it's somebody who doesn't look like you, only when it's somebody that lines up with what we see on YouTube or what we see on the internet, there's this public outrage. So I just think how we handle ourselves across the board should be represented in every areas that we function. I can't be cool at work and act a fool at home and be another fool in the community and then say I'm a victim. That's a perspective. That's a perspective. That's only a small perspective. Although I agree that there are some difficult times that we are experiencing in our communities with young men and things that are happening, but we have to look at every aspect of it and find a resolution, find a solution, find your space of accountability, right? Because some of this stuff could be avoided.
I would agree that all of it that's negative can be avoided, but it also requires what you were just talking about: maturity, accountability, responsibility, humility, and sacrifice. Without those, we're never going to get to, you know, what you're talking about, which we need to get to exactly what you're talking about. One of the things that you touched on that I think is really powerful was talking about how we may act a certain way in the streets, but then when we're at home, we act another way. That's schizophrenic behavior right there. That's psychopathic behavior right there. If you do it at home, do it in the streets. But if you're doing something negative at home, you probably shouldn't go and do that in the streets. But all I'm saying is don't pretend and trick yourself. You mess around and pretend and trick yourself, you are setting yourself up for a fall that is so hard and heavy. You're not even going to really understand what's going on while you're falling, while you're paying that karmic debt, that karmic price. And brothers, understand that this is the warning for young men. We're trying to give you something right now that you may or may not be getting at home. And there's nothing wrong if you're not getting it at home, and we understand. Like, we all have different dynamics at home. But if you're able to listen to this podcast, you might want to be listening, because you're listening to two brothers right now who have ran that race, who are still running that race. And we are still dodging the pitfalls. We're still jumping over the landmines. We're still bypassing the quicksand pits and all of this. Like, this is still happening for us on a daily basis, and we've taught young men to do it.
Yeah.
And we're still teaching young men to do it. This might be one of the most valuable episodes on Two Brothers and an Idea that you've ever listened to, if you're a consistent listener, even though the homie T-Town was having a rough start before we got started.
You know, let's take a look at some of the notes that we have, man, and kind of go through some of that if we can. I know we kind of spoke heavily on one aspect of the conversation, but I would love to get into some of the content that we have prepared.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So as we talk about the warning for young men, there were some things I kind of did some research on, found some ideas, and just kind of put together some thoughts. And as we look at one of the most important things that I find is men in 20s, it's a time to face harsh truths. This decade is crucially for laying the foundation for the rest of your life. You have to get real and understand what's at stake. Here's some straight talk advice to help you navigate through these formative years. Now, the first one, don't let a woman love confuse your brain. Don't let a woman's love confuse your brain. Before I dive into that, what's your thoughts on that right off the top of your head, Fernand?
Well, women are the most intelligent beings on the planet, and they are formidable leaders as long as they're in balance. But when they're not in balance, it's very, very easy for what a woman thinks for a man to allow it to confuse him.
So I think this is important because a lot of times, whether that young man is not receiving the proper nourishment or attention or the validation that is necessary for his self-esteem and self-worth, by the time he steps out to find relationship, first woman that shows him signs of attention, the first woman that says, I love you, woo! You're going off, right? So it says here, first off, stop letting a woman's love mess with your head. At this age, it's easy to get caught up in the thrill of romance. We're talking about a 20-year-old, 19, 20-year-old young man. But you need to be smarter. Love at this stage can be misleading. Do we agree? Women will tell you everything you want to hear, but don't let it cloud your judgment. The majority of relationships forming in your early 20s won't last into marriage. Subjective. Focus on your growth and ambition instead of getting lost in romantic illusions. You think she's the one? Think again. Most likely she's not. Don't waste your energy and emotions on something that statistically is bound to fail. Now, that's a lot. And there's many ways you can look at that. What's your thoughts on that statement?
Well, let's see. First off, stop letting a woman's love mess with your head. I think that young men have got to come back to an understanding of loving themselves, of knowing themselves, because it's very difficult to be confused by the love mess, quote unquote, in a woman's head, according to this statement. If you understand love to yourself, if you and trust and caring and compassion and empathy to self, well, it'll be very difficult for anyone to confuse you. You will, because you'll know what it is to self first. So you'll you've heard the statement before. Real recognizes real.
Right.
So when we know because of experience and not believe, well, when we know because of experience, well, we're experiencing real. And then because of the mirroring of how life works, well, now when we're in front of that, we'll recognize that that's real. But if it's not real, we'll probably be getting all kinds of different feelings, different hunches and quote deja vus and all these different things that we're feeling. That's our spirit trying to communicate a message to us.
Yeah. I think it's important, and I want to really, before we go any further, I want to make it clear this conversation is not to bash or belittle or minimize the experience with young women. These are some early 20s, some little nuggets that we found, and we want to just kind of share that, because a lot of times when I share my personal experiences, when you share your personal experiences, it leaves no room for allegations. And I think that's so important. So I just wanted to lay that out there, because sometimes, people hear things, oh, you teaching young men to bash it. Nah, we're teaching young men to have balance, to have stability.
I want to. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I gotta chime in on that and give you and camelback on it, because yes, 100%, ladies, we're not bashing young women. What we are doing is we're giving the young men an understanding of what's going on. Like, we're not honing in on any specific woman or any specific person,
right?
Or group of brothers. We're going in on what's actually happening. Right. How these brothers are getting put into these positions, or excuse me, how they're putting themselves into these positions, and how to make sure that they have the knowledge for how to not do it.
Right, because the program is consistent. It's been consistent from the beginning of time, right? When I say the program, as you already know, the suggestions, we have the sonic suggestions in our popular culture. We have the visual suggestions in our popular culture. And we also have stored memories and experiences And then so all of these things are trying to get our attention, to indoctrinate us intentionally, to have us feel and think a certain way. And so we have to be able to address those programming. And so one of the things I found interesting is the one you just put up here, focusing on building your purpose. Now, this is not in any order. This is the time to find and build your purpose, right? In your early 20s. I mean, as soon as you stepped up out of high school, right? Going into college, the military, the job force, or whatever you choose to do as a business person, prioritizing your goals and ambitions over relationships. I will tell any young 20-year-old young man, 19, 20-year-old young man, listen, in order for you to be successful, you're going to have to focus on you right now. However, that's not always easy. And we understand that. Building a strong foundation for your future is far more important than catering to the demands of relationships that might not last, right? Now that we're well out of our 20s, we understand this. Your 20s are for setting up a career, understanding your passion, laying down the groundwork for a successful future. Relationships can't wait. Your career and purpose cannot. If you sacrifice your ambitions now for a relationship, you're setting yourself up for regret later. Facts. No cap. What's your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think that when it comes down to purpose, we need to be training our young men to achieve understanding their purpose much earlier than 20 years old. Obviously, for the past generations, it makes perfect sense because of how most of us came up. That around 20 years old, we figure out our purpose. But purpose needs to be something that I would say a child would start to understand more than likely within the first 10 years of life, 7 to 10 years. And that's with the new way of parenting, and not even the new way. Let's say that it's us getting back to the old way of parenting. So that's one of the things that I think about initially. And then the next thing that I think about is when a person starts their life, they probably should focus on themselves. This is a journey of self that they need to focus on. And in this journey of self, you need to be focusing on your career or your the relationships that matter to you, or the things that you like to do for fun, or whatever it is that's for you. You need to be focusing on those things. And then relationships with a significant other, those things need to be secondary, and really might be third dairy or fourth dairy or fifth dairy, might be 15th dairy. I don't know. But what I do know is this: we're supposed to be developing self along this journey. And those who are not developing self, what they're doing is setting themselves up for a big, big fall eventually. Yeah. And I want to give a personal example to lock this in. So one of the things that I did that was a big problem, I was a combat photographer for a long time. Really enjoyed that job. Anytime I would talk to somebody and we was talking about professional stuff, industry stuff, I'm telling them what my job is, and I'm identifying it. I'm a combat photographer, right? Not this is what I serve as, not this is what I do for a living, not this is what my job is. And I am. They call me Ferdinand, like not that. So I didn't understand the danger of this. There wasn't too many people who had given me the warning that I needed to stop identifying as this. And then eventually, once I stepped away from the military 14 years after I started, well, I'm not a combat photographer anymore. I'm not public affairs anymore. I'm just a guy with a camera now. So what happens? I go through a depression. I go through an identity crisis because I didn't understand what those suggestions were doing to me, that I was doing to myself.
Wow. It's good stuff, bro. That's good. That's good. And can you imagine some of the younger brothers, some of these brothers that don't have the wherewithal to identify that, and they go into a spiral?
Yeah.
and they morph into all kinds of stuff, right? And so that's a good observation, man. You want to tackle the next two?
Sure. All right. So our next one is building strategic relationships, and I'm going to go ahead and read it to you all. Don't underestimate the power of networking. Form strategic relationships with people who are already successful and those who have the potential to be. Your network can open doors that you didn't even know existed. Seek mentors, build friendships with like minded individuals, and don't be afraid to reach out to those who inspire you. The people who surround yourself, the people you surround yourself with can make or break your future. Choose wisely and invest in relationships that add value to your life. Strategic relationships are so important. And um I would say that they happen as a result of how we choose to vibrate, how we choose to the spiritual vibrations that we choose to be in, the mental vibrations that we choose to be in. This is what attracts who we have around us. This is what gives us the opportunity to have those strategic relationships. So it becomes very important to live within maturity, accountability, responsibility, humility, and sacrifice on an everyday basis. Love, compassion, and empathy. Well, why? Because this is what opens the door to attract those individuals that you'd like. Now, if you don't choose to live in those principles, well, that's your choice. But understand that how you choose to vibrate, your level of integrity, your level of these different virtues and principles and ethics that matter, your level of them is what's going to determine who you attract around you. And their business acumen, their knowledge levels, their integrity levels. So all of this matters if you want to have a certain type of professionals around you in these strategic relationships, even if it's just for mentorship. But let's go into living a healthy life and being patient with yourself and avoiding destructive habits. Now, I'm not even going to read these other ones. All right. When I say live a healthy lifestyle, definitely the first sentence in this one matters so much. Health is wealth. But how do we get there? The 6 keys of life: nutrition, water, exercise, sleep, sunlight, goals. You got to have balance.
That's right.
And you can see by reading this right here, it's talking about balance. It's talking about exercise, diet, mental health practices, reading books, getting higher education, continuously feeding your mind. It's talking about what is needed to be able to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. You got to have balance for that. Well, you don't have to have balance, but let's just say that the quality of what you achieve, the quality of who you are at the time of achievement, that may be a desire to be at a high clip while you're achieving whatever, and to make it feel like, well, you didn't even really put that much work in. It almost happened really easy. Well, that happens when we're in balance. Tasks and challenges are not as hard when we're in balance. Avoiding destructive habits, super important.
Yeah.
Now, we don't necessarily need to avoid destructive habits if we would put abundance within. So whatever we are consuming through the third eye, through the ears, through the nose, through the eyes, through the mouth, through the secretions of the skin, if we make sure that those are representations of righteousness. So like, what is that? That's vegetables. That may be things we're watching on YouTube that helps us balance our checkbook better, or maybe have better relationships, or to have better integrity, or whatever. Right. Well, these are suggestions of righteousness. And as long as we are bringing those in, we won't have destructive habits. The destructive habits will literally fall off of us like dead skin. But if we do bring in things that are erroneous, then destructive habits have an opportunity to start to take root. So that could be smoking cigarettes, that could be cocaine, heroin, mollies, that could be
Lying.
overuse of alcohol.
That could be lying.
There you go. Yeah,
That could be
definitely.
stealing.
Yes, it could be a number. It could be a number of different things. Lying. It could be, um, it could be cheating on your spouse. It could be beating the hell out of your kids. It could be all kinds of different things that will
Right.
manifest as a result of a person bringing in suggestions that are erroneous suggestions. Because even though they are erroneous, now that they are in, we have to process them. They got to go through the machine and be processed like everything else that comes in, and erroneous things that come in that are being processed. Now they're breaking down the machine, and we don't exactly understand what's going on most of the time because we might not have even realized that the suggestions we were bringing in of food, of television, of anything, of conversations with other people was erroneous. So these are things we got to think about. And then I want to say that we definitely got to be patient with ourselves. We need to actually walk this path diligently, not just come in and say, hey, I really want to have a healthy lifestyle. I really want to make sure I am avoiding destructive habits. No, that's not good enough. There's things that you got to be doing in addition to talking about what you want. I don't just talk about wanting $1 million. I get up every day and I go get it. Right. The $1 million is not going to be dropped in my just dropped in my lap like, oh yeah, it's Tuesday. Let's go ahead and drop Ferdinand $1 million. That's not how it's going to work. This works through diligent effort, diligent work, diligent planning, right? So the patience that you need to have with yourself is also as a result of you doing that diligent, patient work. And if you're not doing that diligent, patient work, you still
Exactly.
need to be patient with yourself, but you might want to, act with some urgency.
You know, I just sat here and was just reflecting on my own personal journey from my early youth up until, to that certain point. And although I have been very grateful and appreciative to a lot of things that I've learned along my journey, these conversations, as frequently as we have them today, I wish I had them early on, right? Can you imagine having these opportunities in the 80s, early 90s, where we're strategically networking, we're strategically building, instead of in pursuit of the American pie, right? We were in pursuit of multiple different things, and to a point that many of us was left to ourselves. So what is it that we had to learn from? The advertisement, right? Or the programming. And so when you get to a certain place of age, you're not even cultivated well enough to engage with relationships properly, to deal with conflict, to not only not dealing with conflict, but just simply communicating. And so there's a lot of things that I think in our early development, although we look back in time, I'm also grateful for those that stand beside me today, those who stand beside you and I, that continuously pour into us. Because one thing I hate the most, and I would never want to put myself in a position of being, is the smartest person in the room, right? That's very scary. And so one of the lessons that I had to learn is that you have to keep growing. And even when those seasons change, you have to keep growing one step at a time. And it's hard when you don't have the faculty, a healthy, balanced faculty between your ears, and you're in survival mode, or you're in pursuit of fame, or you're in pursuit of something much shinier. And so a lot of things that we go through in our early ages, we're just looking for something to validate, to affirm us, to give us insight. We're in pursuit of being wealthy or being rich or being the greatest or being a great wonder. And so I would encourage any young man, as we talked earlier, establishing key principles in your life, balance, understanding your purpose, and finding the places that will make you better, right? As you mentioned, and we was talking about in notes, how surrounding yourself with people that are successful. If you surround yourself with failures of life, you're going to be the smartest person in the hood. If you surround yourself with foolishness, then shortly, if you're not careful, you'll become a foolishness or a fool, right? And so I would say this: build a community, build a network that's going to lift you up, that's going to pour into you. And eventually the reciprocity will come back down and you're able to grow branches, leaves. You know what I'm saying? You'll be able to nourish not only the fields, right? But you'll be able to nourish your communities because you found the network that's going to build. I think men are to create, build, and sustain. As easily as it's said than done. At the end, when it's all said and done, you can look back and see the success of your labor. And so for young men, again, man, you know, when we look back at some of the challenges that you and I had coming along the way, military, family, and all those kind of things, and you look at the place that you are now. And so I appreciate this conversation, and I wish that this continues to have open dialogue with young men, you know, our peers, our brothers who can join in. You know, if you're listening later on YouTube or other channels or other platforms, you know, don't hesitate. Shoot us an email, reach out, you know, be able to collaborate, share some ideas. If you have a story idea or some content that you would like to share, because I think that it is one of the most important things is that we continue to strengthen, encourage this generation and the next generation. And so instead of promoting the debauchery and the foolishness, let's promote some great opportunities, some great ideas, because it's only two brothers in the idea, right?
Well, you know, I'm glad you brought up. I'm glad you brought up the things that you brought up because it's important.
Yes.
That it's really, really important right now that we give this warning to the young men, and it has a lot to do with what's going on with processional information,
Yes.
with
Yes.
going on with the ages that we've shifted into this age of Aquarius. Right? There's a lot of people who may not understand the astrological side of this. They may not understand the planetary alignment, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but they can see the energy change. They can feel the change of the energy. They see it with this feminist movement. They see it with this LGBT movement. You can easily see this energy that I'm talking about in the physical realm, on the plane of things made manifest. So as we see these identity crises go through the roof, it's skyrocketing on what we're seeing right now. We've got to protect our young men. We got to give those warnings. We might not be daddy, we might not be uncle, we might not be grandpa, we might not be your brother, but you might want to listen to us, because right now there's not as many men being men. It's a hard reality. There's not as many men being men, and we understand what's going on. But this is why we're here, to help, to give that extra piece that's needed because of what's going on. And there's a lot of brothers out here who don't understand. And I want to say this before you move forward, because I can feel it brewing. You got something. I got to say this. A part of this problem that we're having with the young men of today that might not be turning into men, it also has to do with a chemical balance. It's what's in the food, but it's also what's being put in the water. There are certain things that are being put into the food and into the water that's literally changing hormonal balances. This is major, what I'm talking about right now.
Right.
And without the guidance that we're given, that dads out there are giving, grandpas are giving, there's a lot of brothers who are going to be lost, moving down a path that is not for them, because they do not understand what's going on right now. But you got the floor, my brother. I can see it brewing.
No, I'm listening, and I think it's fitting for a continuation, part 2, maybe a part 3, man. And then bringing some young brothers on, man, and getting their experience, man, reaching out to our network and getting some young men that we've had opportunity to engage, right? And sharing these stories, right? Because a lot of times on platforms such as this, we hear a lot of negativity, or we're promoting everything that is wrong. You made a statement about men and not enough real men. And although I agree to some extent to what you're saying, but I also see it from this perspective. Let's start identifying and having conversations with those real men that we do know, so that the narrative that there is none changes, right? Because I think at the core of what our young men need, ultimately, amongst many other things, is the love of a father.
I would agree with you 100% on that.
Right?
And you know what?
Not just a random guy who donated a seed, right?
Facts. 100%. Definitely, the love of a father would change so much. But let's do this, because we came to the end of our time. We're done. We're gonna do a part 2 of this episode, Warning for Young Men. We're gonna do a part 2, and hopefully all of y'all brothers who've been commenting, thank you very much. We got quite a few comments. Want to give a big shout out to J King. Want to give a
J King in the building.
Bad news.
Bad news.
Yeah. I want to give a big shout out to both of y'all. Appreciate it. Come through on next Tuesday. We're gonna go ahead and dive a little deeper into Warning for Young Men, but we got to run. So, Teton, you got any closing words?
I just want to say peace and love to those who took the time to stick their head in on us. Love and peace to J King, my brother Bad, and many others that support this conversation. I wanted to ensure that one thing that I wanted to leave as we continue this dialogue, is that there's always a sense that once you achieve all of these things that we're talking about, there's also something else that you have to be aware of. This is what was taught to me. And that is the green eye monster, right? My father would talk about this green eye monster. He would say, as you elevate in your success and you begin to see the field, people are going to be calling your name, right? You're going to be seeing the lights. You're going to be seeing the press. You're going to be, and so you have to be mindful of this stage that you see, right? Where then incoming covetousness. Then you have the people, your own press, like I mentioned earlier, reading your name in the press, people calling your name, because if you're not careful, you will become prideful, arrogant, full of yourself. You understand? And so now the mission and the purpose of what you are seeking out to do is no longer about young people, no longer about family. It's all about you. And so often, and I'll land this way, pride is very, very tricky, because no one but yourself, you have this deception in the mirror that I'm okay, everything is fine, I'm good. But everybody around you see you. And it's not until you turn that light on, look in that mirror, look in the mirror, right? You will begin to see that everything I pursued after was not with love, not with kindness, not with patience, right? Not with humility, but it's how I can make my name great, how I can lift myself up, how I can be seen. And so that's important. And so I'll lead with that, and we'll dive into that in part 2, man. Appreciate you, man. Always good conversation. Peace and love to everybody that tuned in. Nice coffee break today.
Definitely appreciate you as well. It's always great conversations here. Two Brothers and an Idea. We've made it to episode 16, pivotal important number. And I want to thank everybody else out there. I want to thank everybody out there who's listening, who is sharing the video, who's commenting, who's showing love to the videos, to the podcast. Listen, I'm telling you right now, just like the brother J King wrote, and I want to post this up on the screen. We need people to see and hear this. 100% correct. The suggestions in our environment have got to get to a place where we are focused on righteousness and positivity and everlasting life more abundantly. And that's what this show is about. So thank everybody out there for supporting us. And please share this to as many people as possible. Have your son listen to this. Have your uncle listen to this. Y'all listen to this as a family. All right. And last thing, expose your gift.